I nearly spilled my wine when I saw him across the crowded gallery. Jace, my high school sweetheart who had disappeared without a trace 15 years ago. Our eyes locked and memories came flooding back. The dizzy excitement of young love, late nights full of laughter, promises of forever. Then the gut-wrenching confusion when he vanished unexpectedly. I watched Jace weave through the crowd toward me, still trim and handsome as ever, though time had etched faint lines at the corners of those piercing green eyes. "Marla," he said, "I can't believe it's you." His voice sent shivers down my spine. "You look incredible." I murmured awkward pleasantries, stunned by this ghost from my past. What was Jace doing back in Colorado Springs after all this time? I noticed no wedding ring on his finger and couldn't help but wonder if he was still the charming heartbreaker who had left me pining all those years ago. "What brings you here?" I managed. "My job. I'm a web designer now, freelance. Just got hired for a project here in town." He seemed nervous. I studied his face, searching for a clue to whether he had thought of me at all during our 15 years apart. Jace suggested grabbing dinner to catch up. I hesitated at first, but curiosity got the better of me. Over candlelit pasta, wine flowing freely, the conversation turned intensely personal. Jace revealed he had burned out on big city life in Chicago, tired of the rat race and shallow connections. Now here he was, hoping for a fresh start someplace more peaceful. "Maybe this chance meeting is the universe telling me I need to set down roots," he said earnestly. "Reconnect with what really matters." When his hand found mine across the table, my pulse quickened. I thought of my small but comfortable house, my position as project manager in my family's firm, the quiet predictability of my life. Jace's return felt like a spark of electricity jolting me out of complacency. By the end of the evening, we had exchanged numbers with a promise to meet again soon. I barely slept that night, my mind spinning. When Jace called the very next day, I said yes immediately to another date, and another after that. His affectionate attention was intoxicating, exactly what I thought I had left behind in my teen years. He whispered sweet nothings in my ear and showered me with compliments. I felt desired, cherished. Before I knew it, we were officially a couple, seeing each other multiple times a week. My friends were skeptical when they heard Jace was back on the scene. "Isn't he the one who disappeared without explanation?" Cleo said pointedly. "Be careful, Marla." But I brushed off their warnings. When you find a connection like this, you have to see it through, I thought. What if Jace is my second chance at true love? Barely 3 months had passed, yet Jace dropped to one knee and presented me with a diamond ring. "Marla, you are the love of my life," he declared passionately. "I want to spend every day with you. Will you marry me?" My pulse roared in my ears. This was happening so fast, but when you know, right? I gazed at Jace's handsome face and eager eyes. He had lit a fire in my once predictable life. Maybe this whirlwind romance was exactly what I needed. "Yes!" I cried. "Yes, Jace, I'll marry you." He swept me up ecstatically in his arms. I clung to him, dizzied by emotions I hadn't felt since high school. My parents were skeptical when they heard the news. "Shouldn't you take things slow?" Mom asked. "Are you sure you really know this man after just a few months?" "I've never been more certain of anything," I insisted. Jace turned on the charm for them. "I know we rushed into this engagement," he admitted, "but from the moment I saw Marla again, I just knew. She makes me want to be a better man." Mom and Dad eventually acquiesced with tentative blessings. We couldn't afford some lavish wedding, so we opted for a small ceremony at the courthouse with our families and closest friends. I used up most of my savings account on a simple white dress and reception dinner afterwards. But Jace looked at me like I was the most beautiful woman in the world as we exchanged vows, pledging our lives to one another. That night, wrapped blissfully in my new husband's arms, I sighed, "I can't believe we're finally married." Jace nestled his face into my hair. "You've made me happier than I ever dreamed possible." As a wedding gift, Mom and Dad helped us buy a little 2-bedroom house in the suburbs. "Consider it an investment in your new life together," Dad said, admiration for Jace replacing his initial hesitations. My heart swelled gazing around our first home, picturing the family we would raise within these walls. Cleo came over the first week after our honeymoon, eager to see how I was settling in as a newlywed. "You look happier than ever," she remarked. "I hope Jace knows how lucky he is." I smiled radiantly. Oh, he tells me every day. My life felt richer and fuller by the month. As I rode this wave of marital bliss, the rapid pace of it all seemed irrelevant. I had everything I could want: the devoted husband, the cozy home, in-laws' approval. What more could a woman ask for? Doubts were a distant memory now. I had made the right choice marrying Jace. I just knew it. The first year of our marriage passed in a blissful blur, but as the honeymoon glow faded, I began noticing strange behaviors from Jace. He started disappearing for hours at a time, never telling me where he was going. Often he came home late reeking of alcohol, brushing off my worried questions. One night I awoke to find his side of the bed empty. The clock read 3:14 a.m. Sick with worry, I tried Jace's cell, but it went straight to voicemail. Where could he possibly be at this hour? At sunrise, he finally rolled in, clothes disheveled, clearly intoxicated. "Where have you been?" I demanded. "I was scared sick." He just shot me a sheepish grin. "Sorry, babe. The guys convinced me to grab some late-night drinks after work. I should have texted." I might have believed his flimsy excuse if it hadn't happened twice more that week. Jace claimed overtime or drinks with colleagues, but when I phoned his office to check, they insisted he had left at his normal time. One afternoon, I stumbled on receipts stuffed hastily in his pant pockets for a fancy necklace and resort hotel stay. Purchases we certainly couldn't afford on our household income. When I confronted Jace, he turned defensive. "You're snooping now? Unbelievable. It was a work trip. The necklace is for you. I can't have privacy?" He stormed off, leaving me standing there, receipt crumpled in my fist, feeling petty and ashamed. But I couldn't ignore the seed of doubt taking root inside me. The next time Jace disappeared, I drove to that resort and asked if a guest named Jace had checked in recently. "I'm afraid we can't disclose private guest information," the manager said. Before I could plead further, recognition flashed in her eyes. "Wait, I do remember him. Had drinks at our lounge bar with some blonde woman. Looked pretty friendly with her." The revelation knocked the wind out of me. When Jace came home that night, I unleashed on him. "Who is she, Jace? The truth." He had the audacity to look wounded. "What are you talking about? There's no one else, Marla. How could you accuse me of that?" "I followed one of your lies straight to that resort lounge," I retorted. "They told me everything." Jace paced angrily. "So now you're tracking my movements? Have you lost your mind?" He stormed towards the door. I refused to endure this constant interrogation in my own home. As the door slammed shut behind him, it finally sank in. The man I loved was not the man I had married. Where had things gone so horribly wrong? Things between Jace and I went from bad to worse after that explosive argument. He was hardly ever home anymore. Strange charges began appearing on our credit card bill, and I could no longer ignore his chemical odor late at night, the dilated pupils and agitated manner. My husband had entered the world of hard drugs. I confronted Jace as he stumbled through our front door, eyes bloodshot and his shirt rumpled. "Where have you been? Are you using?" He glared defiantly, so I blew off some steam with friends. "You gonna punish me for that, too?" "I saw the credit charges, Jace," I said. "Motel rooms, jewelry. This isn't just a little recreational fun. You're lying, doing God knows what with God knows who." My voice broke on the verge of hysterics. "This isn't the man I married." Jace seized my arms and shoved me against the wall. "You want to know what I do late at night?" he spat. "Sometimes I'd rather be with anyone than lie next to your judgmental accusations. Hell, a good hooker accepts my payment without demanding a play-by-play." I pushed him away, stunned by this vicious stranger in my home. "If you wanted out, you should have said so," I cried. "Not drag this family through your sordid double life." Jace's lip curled into a sneer. "Don't lecture me about family values, not when I bust my ass to provide for this one while you sit around policing my every move." His tirade cut me to the core. In desperation, I threatened divorce, but Jace just laughed coldly. "You'll take me back, just like you always do," he taunted. "Big, strong Marla, so tough, yet so gullible." His expression hardened. "But cross me again, and you'll regret it." A chill ran down my spine at those words. That night, while Jace slept, I searched feverishly through his things. Buried deep, I uncovered baggies of white powder, seedy photos of Jace with strange women, thousands in ATM withdrawals. The cold truth stared back. This was no longer my husband, but a hostile imposter who had invaded our lives. In the dead of night, aware I was risking my safety, I began meticulously documenting Jace's more incriminating activities on my phone. A heated phone call with an unknown yelling over payments owed, powder residue on his work desk, unexplained furtive behavior in shadowy alleyways. As the evidence against Jace mounted, so did my agony over the man I had so foolishly entrusted my future to. Worse yet, now merely existing in the same house as Jace filled me with dread, never knowing when his hair-trigger temper might erupt again. Several weeks later, Cleo came over unexpectedly for our usual Saturday girls' brunch. As she chattered away, I mechanically pushed food around my plate, lost in thought, fingers probing the faded bruise on my upper arm hidden beneath a cardigan, a parting gift from Jace during our last scuffle. Cleo's eyes narrowed with concern. "Marla?" Gently she pulled my sweater sleeve back, revealing the ugly purple and yellow mark marring my skin. Her jaw dropped, comprehension dawning. Breaking down at last, I confessed everything. The lying, the cheating, now the fear of my own husband. Cleo enveloped me in her arms as I wept. "Pack your bags," she said firmly. "You're coming home with me." I sprung into action after that painful confrontation with Cleo, determined to shield myself from Jace's downward spiral. His threats still rang in my ears. Crossing him again would end badly for me. First, I stealthily withdrew over 10 grand from our dwindling savings to reopen my old personal checking account. If I made a run for it, I'd need quick access to funds. I stuffed essentials into bags stashed at Cleo's, ready to flee at a moment's notice. My next call was to an old college buddy who now worked in private investigation. I fed Conrad the names of seedy establishments Jace frequented and details of an assault charge during his Chicago days that Jace had conveniently omitted when we reconnected. "I'll run full background checks, dig deeper into recent activity," Conrad assured me. "We'll get clarity on who this guy really is." While anxiously awaiting Conrad's findings, I played the part of dutiful wife at home. Jace remained oblivious to my maneuvers as I continued logging evidence of his misdeeds. Most importantly, I kept close tabs on his packed schedule, noting when he slipped off for his illicit rendezvous. Late one evening, when Jace left for the office, I followed him at a distance to a rundown apartment complex and watched him disappear inside. Conrad's call came just as I witnessed a disheveled woman around Jace's age emerge looking dazed and hollow. Before she spotted me, I hit Conrad's number. "Got back deep records on your husband," he reported grimly. "Guy's in trouble. Mountains of gambling debt, suspected drug trafficking back in Chicago. He's dangerous, Marla." My blood turned to ice. So the man I had welcomed into my bed, my life, my family home, was a complete fraud, capable of God knows what ilk, if I exposed his lies. "There's more." Conrad's voice dropped. "Jace is wanted for assaulting his ex up north. Put her in the hospital with a concussion and 2 broken ribs when she tried leaving him." My knees buckled as Conrad described injuries mirroring my own concealed bruises. I realized then, Jace hadn't just duped me. He had methodically preyed upon my deepest longings to bind me helplessly to him before unleashing his demonic side. And I had danced straight into his trap. "He won't let me walk away easily," I whispered, comprehending my grave misjudgment too late. "Jace will seriously hurt me if he finds out what I know." "We'll make sure that doesn't happen," Conrad said. "I still have law enforcement contacts here. We'll get him arrested safely so you can get free." Wheels turning rapidly, I knew I needed allies for whatever endgame faced me, and Jace. Starting with my family's business, as office manager, I discreetly relocated precious client files and redirects company funds into protected accounts, shielding those assets from Jace's grasp. I strong-armed a bank associate into freezing the remaining savings under my name only. And I informed my family attorney on the sly about my situation, urging him to accelerate preparations for divorce. Finally, steeling myself before meeting Cleo later that week, I confessed my plan to set up Jace's downfall, regardless of the risk I faced. She squeezed my hand supportively. "I've got your back, girl, whatever happens next." The bait was set. I had arranged for an anonymous cash payment to be left at a discreet drop location after feeding Jace a fabricated work emergency. If all went according to plan, he would take the money and run, directly into our trap. My group of co-conspirators gathered at a rented office space near the drop point, reviewing our strategy. My family attorney briefed 2 plainclothes officers on Jace's history of assault. Cleo paced anxiously but nodded reassuringly when I caught her eye, and Conrad scanned area security feeds on a laptop, tracking Jace's movements. I peered over Conrad's shoulder as Jace's car appeared, pulling to the location described in the fake text I had shown him earlier. We held our breath, watching the grainy screen as Jace glanced around furtively, before retrieving the parcel and speeding off. "He took the bait. Let's move," Conrad confirmed. We piled into 2 unmarked police vehicles, tailing Jace to a seedy motel on the outskirts of town. Undercover cameras captured him exiting his car, parcel tucked under one arm, looking smug as he entered a corner room. It was go time. I waited in the car, heart hammering, while the team stormed in. Even with the element of surprise on our side, the confrontation sounded ugly from my shelter around the corner. Crashing furniture, enraged yelling from Jace, cries of "Get your hands off me!" Then, silence. Moments later, Jace emerged in handcuffs, face mottled with rage as he realized my betrayal. "You set me up, you devious bitch," he roared, fighting against the restraints. "I'll kill you for this, Marla." I met his livid glare unflinchingly, let him spew threats. He was the one in chains now. As officers shoved Jace into the back of a squad car, grim satisfaction swelled within me. We had seized control from my tormentor at last. With the stolen cash and illegal substances found in Jace's possession, plus extensive documentation detailing his shady history, the police had enough evidence to hold him on felony charges. But the most damaging blow to Jace still awaited as part 2 of my plot unfolded. Hours after the motel sting, our town's elite gathered for a lavish business awards gala that I knew Jace planned to attend. Right on cue as the event kicked off, 2 uniformed officers marched through the glitzy ballroom entrance, eliciting audible gasps as they make a beeline for my table. My heart pounded with everyone's eyes upon me. "Marla Brooks, we need you to come with us," the taller officer stated while attendees gawked and murmured. "It's about your husband, ma'am." As instructed, I let out a strangled cry while the officers gently escorted me away. Before disappearing from sight, I glimpsed open-mouthed stares, my name echoing through the crowd. The spectacle was complete. No doubt word of Jace's shame would spread like wildfire. By dawn, his reputation in this town would be destroyed beyond repair. Alone in the ladies' room, I sagged against the wall as relief crashed over me. It was over. My nightmare at long last was finally over. I had reclaimed my life and my future. As tears spilled down my cheeks, an unexpected laugh escaped me. No more hiding, no more looking over my shoulder. I walked out into the night air reborn, unbound, the orange glow of streetlights welcoming me back to the world. In the weeks following Jace's dramatic arrest, I dove headfirst into legal proceedings, determined to nail his coffin shut. Restraining orders, divorce filings, lawsuits against Jace piled up on my attorney's desk as I sought financial and legal reparations. Most crucially, I provided police a full dossier documenting Jace's years of deception. The bruises concealed beneath layers of makeup, frantic texts sent furtively to friends whenever Jace lost his temper. My testimony was damning enough that prosecutors felt confident pursuing domestic assault charges alongside Jace's multiple drug and fraud offenses. When Jace appeared at his preliminary hearing, cocky as ever in an orange jumpsuit and shackles, his smug grin faded as formal charges were presented. His eyes burned with impotent fury when they landed on me sitting resolutely in the front row. The judge set harsh bail terms Jace had no means to meet. As guards dragged my soon-to-be ex back to his cell, his enraged screams echoed through the courtroom. "You'll pay for this, Marla! I promise you, you backstabbing whore!" His words no longer fazed me. They merely sealed his ultimate downfall. In the final divorce decree a month later, the judge took Jace to the cleaners. Due to irrefutable evidence of mental and physical abuse, I was granted our home, remaining household assets, and a hefty alimony settlement given my demonstrated resilience in the face of turmoil. "He deserves worse," Cleo fumed when reviewing the terms. "You went through hell thanks to Jace." I waved her off warily. It's enough knowing karma caught up with him. With multiple felony charges, he'll spend years in prison. That's revenge enough. Rumor mills churned in our small suburban circle about sordid details of Jace's collapsed house of cards. Drugs, cheating, physical assault. My divorce attorney arranged an exclusive tell-all interview for me with the local paper, cementing sympathy on my side. Portray her as the courageous hero who prevailed despite unimaginable betrayal and abuse behind closed doors, my counsel directed. She exposed a dangerous fraud and kept other women safe in the process. I confessed my whole gut-wrenching ordeal to the reporter, the subtle manipulation that seduced me, incremental violence excused away until it became intolerable, the elaborate sting operation that finally halted Jace's reign of terror. I ignored all the red flags because I so badly wanted to believe in second chances, I acknowledged. But some people cannot be saved. Now I advocate for stronger protections to prevent stories like mine. Public reaction to my published account was fiercely supportive. Well-wishers stopped me on the street, praising my bravery. Mothers with teenage daughters made me promise to visit their local high schools, so no other woman falls prey to toxic love like you did. Their faith in me to transform suffering into positive change moved me deeply. From my hometown to the halls of state legislature, I was living proof that even domestic violence victims could reclaim their strength. And redemption never tasted sweeter than the day State of Colorado versus Jace Eaton flashed across my phone screen, signifying the final death knell to my tormentor's devastation. Justice was served at last. With the smoke cleared from legal battles, I shifted focus to piecing my life back together. The house Jace and I had once shared became my solitary refuge, as I grieved the man I thought I married versus the monster revealed. Bitterness still arose occasionally over wasted years chained to Jace's deception. But anger no longer controlled me. Now purpose filled my days instead. Through counseling, I found wisdom and closure. My therapist inspired me to channel hardship into uplifting other women trapped in abusive cycles. Transform your testimony into empowerment, she urged. Let your story give hopeless victims the courage to break free. I began volunteering for a nonprofit domestic violence group, then joined their board to guide strategy. Within a year, I had spearheaded a broad outreach campaign called Rise Above that brought survivor stories into high schools and colleges. I shared my journey escaping Jace's grip to rapt audiences, refusing to gloss over uglier parts. See this scar under my eye? I would point out, a relic of Jace hurling a glass object. I once mistook rage for passion, but violence should never be normalized for the sake of love. My mission to advocate for at-risk women soon grew into a nonprofit venture I founded called New Dawn. We ran empowerment seminars, offered pro bono counseling and legal help, even temporarily housed women fleeing dangerous homes. 3 years later, New Dawn had expanded into 3 counties with a paid staff of 10 running daily operations. We opened new emergency shelters annually. I rubbed shoulders with state politicians and prominent activists as a respected leader in the field. One day, Cleo forwarded me a news article titled "Disgraced Businessman Sent Back to Jail," featuring Jace's scowling mugshot. I skimmed details of his failed parole attempt after serving time for drug charges tied to my case. A small flare of satisfaction rose in me knowing Florida penitentiaries would remain Jace's miserable dwelling. New Dawn got a shout-out in that story on Jace, Cleo added proudly. They credited your whole movement bringing light to domestic abuse issues locally. My eyes misted reading glowing praise for our collective impact. Perhaps my battered old soul still had some healing left to do. But staring at Jace's hardened criminal face, I felt only detachment, like gazing upon a stranger now. His power to haunt me had faded long ago. The chapter of my life defined by Jace's menacing presence had long since closed. In its place, a confident visionary and nurturer of broken spirits had emerged, one for whom peace and purpose now shaped days where uncertainty and fear once dwelled. Redemption manifests in many forms. Rarely does it arrive as we envisioned. But my second chance was never sweeter.
I'm just telling you, it's time for you to leave. Can't you see yourself in the mirror and feel embarrassed? Am I that embarrassing to you? Yes, you are. This whole situation is embarrassing. Even with my close friends and boss here, the thought of them finding out you're joining the family is frustrating. My name is Olivia. I was born with a physical condition and use a wheelchair instead of my legs. I grew up in a family of 5. with my parents who have passed away, and my lovely brother John. My parents raised me with as much love and care as any other child. They showered me with affection, and while my brother John, though a bit overprotective, has always been supportive. That's how I've lived a happy life. Now, as Madam CEO, I receive the schedule for this month. I'm grateful and happy to stay busy, but sometimes I wish for a break. Despite my appearance, I run a company. Even though my body is different, I do my best in everything I can. That's why I studied hard and wanted to succeed on my own terms. My hard work paid off, and I was able to start my own business. As I discuss the schedule with my secretary, I get a call. "Hello, John, what's up?" "Hey, sorry to bother you when you're busy. Actually, I'm getting married and I wanted to tell you first, Olivia." "Really? Congratulations. What's the person like?" "We met through work. They're kind, good at cooking and housework, just wonderful." "That's great. As your sister, I'm relieved you found someone." "Stop talking like our mom, will you?" "Well, I was just worried if you could really find someone." "Wonderful. How well? The wedding is set for 5 months from now. That's quite sudden, isn't it, with how things are nowadays? We just thought it was the right time. I'm sorry, it's all so rushed. But can you make it, Olivia? Of course I'll be there. It's your wedding after all. I'll make it work no matter what. But you better come to my wedding too. Thanks. Wait, your wedding, Olivia? I haven't heard anything about that. Haha, don't work too hard. Okay. See you. As I quickly manage my work schedule for the wedding, my secretary watches me with a warm smile. My brother and I are busy in different industries, and I haven't met his fiancée yet. The day of the wedding arrives, and as I'm about to enter the venue, someone calls out to me. "Hey, you there, wait a moment." "Oh, are you talking to me?" "Are you by any chance?" "What?" "It's obvious, isn't it? I'm the bride, the star of today's show." "Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Olivia, John's sister." I was glad to meet Nicole, the bride, but her attitude seemed a bit strange. Strange. While I wondered about it, she suddenly said, "Hey, what's with this woman?" "I can't believe this, Nicole." "What's going on? Don't touch me, please." "I wasn't told that John had a sister like you." I knew he had a sister, but not like this. It seemed like Nicole didn't like how I looked. That's why she acted so cold when we greeted each other. "What's the matter with you?" She said, "I don't care if John's sister or whatever. That's a different matter. How will you compensate if you infect me with something? Please calm down. There's nothing about me that you can catch. Keep quiet. Your droplets are spreading. I can't believe this. People like you should be mentioned beforehand. Finding this out on the wedding day is the worst." "Worst? What about me is the worst? You should figure it out yourself." "Anyway, John and I are getting married, so I'll have to deal with you whether I like it or not. If people find out someone like you is my sister-in-law, I'll be humiliated in front of everyone." "Think a little." "Think? What do you mean?" "I'm saying you should be considerate enough to leave. Can't you look at yourself in the mirror and feel ashamed? Am I an embarrassment to you? Yes, all of it. This whole situation is embarrassing. Even with my close friends and boss here, it's embarrassing that they'll know you're part of the family. Do you always think like this? Huh, that's none of your business. Since I caught John the CEO, don't you dare get in my way. I was sure Nicole was tricking my brother. She was clearly pretending to be nice. My brother, who is always kind and never gets angry, had been fooled by a strange woman. I didn't want to make things worse on his special day, so I tried to forget about it. Thinking about how important this day was for my brother, I decided to leave quietly. Then I'll be leaving now. I'll just leave a gift here. I don't need money from someone like you. You don't even look like you can hold a decent job. You're just leeching off John, aren't you? I bet your gift is something small like $7, right? Is that so? Then I'll take this $70,000 gift back with me. It's quite heavy, though. $70,000. Wait, if you had that much money, you should have said so earlier. I'll take it. Sorry, I've already put it away. It's too late now. I'll be leaving then. No, you leave that gift here. And why do you even have that much money? Oh, I see. That's money you took from John, isn't it? No, actually, I run a company that makes mobility equipment with a global reputation. Even though I look different, my company makes $700 million a year, so a gift like this is no big deal. All the more reason to leave that $770,000 here. I'll use it for John and my happiness. Honestly, I don't approve of your marriage to my brother. I can't accept someone like you who is just after his money. Stop raising your voice. It's your fault for being deceived. What's all this about? My brother John appeared, and Nicole looked shocked. This is. Well, what are you talking about, brother? No, it's not like that. I'm not after the money. I just wanted to support and be there for you, John. Hey, Nicole, what did you say to my precious sister, Olivia? What did you mean by what you said? John, why are you so angry? It doesn't matter to me if you're after my money or whatever. You can do as you like. It's my responsibility, and even if we break up someday, I won't be angry. But what I absolutely won't forgive is you disrespecting my dear Olivia. I was really surprised to see my usually gentle and calm brother raise his voice, but I also felt truly happy to hear him standing up for me. Meanwhile, Nicole, who was scolded by my brother, said, well then, she can come to the wedding. Okay, so first, John, let's calm down, all right. What do you mean she can come? We don't need your permission, do you? You really think I'd go through with a wedding with someone who's been so cruel to Olivia, the most important person in my world? There's no way that's happening. Why not? I just said your sister can come. That doesn't matter anymore. I can't and won't marry a woman who insults my family. We're breaking off the wedding. Breaking off the wedding? Why both? Olivia and I lost our parents when we still needed them. Olivia cried because she was lonely, but she still tried to cheer me up when I was sad. Even though she wanted to cry, she held it back and gave me the brightest smile. She was just a little kid in elementary school, and I was already in high school, a grown man. She held back her tears and told me to smile, and that gave me strength, brother. You remembered that? Of course I do. How could I forget you holding back so many tears, but still managed to smile? I still remember that smile of yours to this day. That's why even when work gets tough, I think of your smile, and it keeps me going. You tried to do house chores you only learned in home economics, but before I knew it, you were just making meals. You were preparing lunches too. Olivia and I supported each other through life like that. I won't forgive anyone who insults such an important family member. Apologize to Olivia. Supporting each other, really? That's so exaggerated. Take back every single thing you said to Olivia. Look her in the eyes and apologize properly. Don't say anything else. My brother kept insisting that Nicole apologize to me for the disrespect she showed. We siblings have had struggles that only we can understand, and maybe that's why her words felt like an insult. As I stood there unable to do anything but watch, my brother, someone approached us. Sorry you interrupt, just popping in here. Hey, do you even understand what kind of company you're working for? What? Why is the CEO here? You see, John has helped me a lot in business, and we even go out for meals together when we have time in our private lives. Isn't our company a distributor of mobility equipment? Yet your attitude and behavior are completely unacceptable from any angle. I looked at him surprised. Wait, Scott, why are you here? I'm sorry you had to see such an unpleasant scene, Jan, said Scott. But do you know, Olivia, I had no idea either. I'm also shocked to learn that John's dear sister is Olivia. I've been in a relationship with Olivia, and I want to marry her. So I'm asking for now my brother-in-law's permission. Scott explained his words a bit awkwardly. Really, Scott? Bringing this up right now and suddenly talking about being brothers-in-law. John said, shaking his head. This is typical, Scott. John Olivia is getting married to Scott, Anna interjected, trying to lighten the mood. But I trust you, Scott. I know you'll take good care of Olivia. Why is everyone suddenly so happy? John wondered aloud. John, I promise to devote my life to making Olivia happy. I won't let you down. Please let me marry Olivia, Scott pleaded earnestly. And you're saying this here, right now, John, said Scott, still processing. My boyfriend, Scott, who is also the CEO of Nickel Company, had just revealed his relationship with me to my brother John. They had both been friends in business and in life, but neither knew how we were all connected until now. Olivia, witnessing all this, finally spoke up. Wait a minute, what? So this woman is the girlfriend of our company's CEO, and John, the savvy entrepreneur, is her brother. That's incredible, Nickel exclaimed. But even if it's luck, Olivia worked hard to get here. She faced everything head-on and used her brains to succeed. Don't belittle her achievements by calling it luck. And by the way, she just became my fiancée a moment ago, so you understand what it means to insult the woman I'm marrying, right? Scott replied defiantly. So what if I did? I don't care if she's your girlfriend, friend, or fiancée or whatever. What's a CEO going to do? It's just personal stuff, right? Nickel retorted. Well, yes, Scott replied calmly, but there are clients here, and the company's reputation is at stake. Your remarks, Nickel, are a serious issue in my company. Such behavior would be grounds for dismissal. You can't just fire me. That would be a problem, Nickel protested. I'm sorry, please forgive me. I can't stand the idea of someone like you becoming my sister-in-law, Nickel pleaded. If you can't understand why you need to apologize, then there's no point in talking any further, Scott said firmly. Wait, please. Breaking off the engagement and getting fired are big problems for me. How am I supposed to live if that happens? Nickel begged, her tone desperate. Why don't you look for another company? Scott suggested calmly. I'm done with you, Nickel, Scott said firmly. But you still want me to get you a job at my company? Nickel's eyes widened with desperation. John, please, can you help me get a job? I'm your sister-in-law. Isn't there something you can do? She pleaded. John shook his head slowly. Nickel, you really don't get it, do you? After all this mess, there's no way you're getting hired at my company. It's not about family ties. It's about trust and respect. But I'm family. Isn't it embarrassing to leave me unemployed? Nickel's voice cracked as she tried to defend herself. Embarrassing? No, it's not embarrassing, John said, his tone softening slightly. But if you're just calling this a mistake, it means you actually believe what you said. You haven't shown any real intention to apologize. It doesn't look like you mean it. Nickel's face flushed with panic as she realized the gravity of her situation. I didn't mean to offend anyone. I just said the wrong thing. If it was a mistake, Nickel, it was a big one, Scott said, his expression serious. I faced many people's judgments, but you're the first to speak so openly and harshly to me. It was a shock, but now I see that some people really think like you do. Does that mean you'll forgive me?" Nickel asked, her eyes wide with hope. "No, I can't forgive you," Scott replied, shaking his head. "Who wouldn't be upset after hearing what you said? Imagine if someone spoke to you like that. Would you be happy? If it were me, I'd probably respond even more harshly." "Well, it's going to be tough for you from now on. But good luck," Scott said, turning away from her. "Marrying someone who can say such hurtful things is impossible. Our parents in heaven would be disappointed if I married someone like that." Olivia nodded in agreement. "That's true. Mom was so kind, and Dad was very compassionate. I see now that my idea of a perfect couple was based on them. I want to have a relationship like that with Scott." Scott smiled at Olivia, his eyes softening. "We can build that kind of relationship together." Olivia and John stepped forward, his expression stern. "Scott, could you let go of Olivia's hand for a moment? It seems you've made your decision, brother. And one more thing, Nickel, you are responsible for all the wedding expenses." Nickel's face fell. "Ouch, that's going to be a big hit on my wallet," she muttered, her voice filled with despair. "Well, Nickel," Scott continued, "I think it's best to call off the wedding. I've already told all my friends and posted about the dress, the food, and the venue on social media." Nickel's eyes widened with realization. No, I can't have the wedding called off. I've already told everyone. I shared everything online. How am I supposed to explain this?" "Maybe you should delete those posts," Scott suggested calmly. "Most people who see them don't even know you. Is it really worth boasting to strangers about something that's not going to happen?" Nickel looked around frantically, trying to find a way out of her predicament. "Wait, please. This is impossible. You have to reconsider. Think about it, please," she begged. Scott sighed, looking at Nickel with a mix of pity and resolve. "Nickel, you need to think this over. What you did was hurtful and disrespectful. It's going to be hard for you, but you have to face the consequences of your actions." As Scott turned to leave, Nickel's voice grew more desperate. "Please, Scott, don't leave me like this." "I'll do anything to make it right," she cried. Scott paused for a moment, then continued walking away, leaving Nickel to reflect on her actions. The reality of her situation was finally sinking in, and she realized that she had to take responsibility for the chaos she had caused. Meanwhile, Olivia and John watched the scene unfold with a sense of relief and closure. They knew that their family dynamics would be different from now on, but they also understood that this change was necessary for everyone involved. As they left, Olivia took Scott's hand, feeling a sense of hope for their future together despite the turmoil. She knew that they had made the right decision and that they could face whatever challenges lay ahead with confidence and strength. Back at home, Olivia and Scott sat down together, reflecting on the events of the day. "I'm so proud of you, Scott," Olivia said softly. "You stood up for what's right even when it was difficult." Scott smiled, holding Olivia close. "I couldn't have done it without you, Olivia. You've been my rock through all of this, and I'm so grateful for your support." As they looked out the window, the sun set on a day that marked a new beginning for them both. They knew that the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but they were ready to face it together with love and determination. And so they moved forward, leaving the past behind and embracing the future with open hearts and unwavering faith in each other. "I feel like I hear something, but let's not worry about it and move on." "Wait, where are you going, brother?" "We're off to host an engagement party for Scott and Olivia." "Well then, my princess, shall we go?" "Wait, what, Brother Scott? This is suddenly so embarrassing." Thanks to my brother's kind planning, what was supposed to be a simple wedding turned into a surprise engagement party for Scott and me. Many of our colleagues and mutual friends were invited. When Scott and I arrived and started greeting everyone, my brother suddenly began crying. Some people found it amusing and laughed, while others, maybe feeling touched, also shed some tears. Because of my brother's kind nature, Scott and I could announce our engagement in a warm and friendly setting. It felt good to have the support and love of our friends and family around us. Everyone seemed genuinely happy for us, and it made the moment even more special. Meanwhile, Nickel was kicked out of the venue, just as my brother had said she would be. Nickel had to pay for the entire cost of the ceremony and went into debt to cover it. She had hoped to show off her new status as the CEO's wife and enjoy some fame and respect. However, things didn't go as she planned. She was fired from her job, and instead of living the life of a CEO's wife, she's now being chased by debt collectors. Nickel had planned to live with my brother, so her apartment lease had already been canceled. Now she's left without a place to live and is dealing with the reality of her situation. Some people in the industry said they saw her in the park looking lost and distressed, but it's unclear if it was really her. The glamorous life she hoped for has crumbled, and she's facing the harsh truth of her decisions. As for me, Olivia, I'm finally getting married to Scott. Don't worry, we will live happily together. My brother assures me that Scott is trustworthy and that we will have a wonderful life together. We're excited to start this new chapter and build a happy future. I know it's safe, but there's still this uneasy feeling I can't quite put into words. What is this feeling? Hey John, I hope it's not too forward of me to ask, but could the four of us visit the grave on our next day off? I'd really like to meet your parents too. Scott, you're such a kind guy. Hey brother, you're going to make me cry again. Haha, thanks to Scott's thoughtful suggestion, we've decided to spend our next day off visiting her parents' grave. It's something that feels both important and right to do. Even though my brother recently broke off his engagement, he's managed to stay his usual cheerful self, which is comforting to see. He's been so strong through everything, and I hope that one day a wonderful person will come into his life. Someone who will make him the happiest man in the world. He deserves so much joy and love. As I thought about this, I realized my brother likely felt the same way. He's always been someone who looks out for others, and it's clear he wants the best for everyone around him. When I look up at the sky, it's a bright, clear blue without a single cloud in sight. There's something so peaceful about it, and it feels like the perfect setting for what we're planning. Watching my brother as he gazes up at the sky, I can't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude for everything he's done for me. He's always been there, looking out for me and making sure I was taken care of. I silently thank him in my heart, appreciating all the love and support he's given me over the years. As we plan our visit, I think about how meaningful it will be. Visiting the grave is not just about paying respects. It's about connecting with the past and honoring the memories of those who came before us. After Ryan and Lisa came back for the birth of their baby, my mother-in-law coldly told me to leave. She said her oldest son and his wife would arrive in 5 days and that I should go. I was shocked and confused. Leave, I asked. Yes, we don't need you to act like a mother here anymore. You're not needed. Ryan and his family will stay here. Please leave by tomorrow, she said. I always felt like I wasn't really part of the family since I married. Being treated as less than a wife, I never thought they would ask me to leave. She called me a failure for not being able to have children and told me I should be thankful for what I had. She hinted that my husband was also fed up with me. I'm Patricia Crow. After hearing this, I realized there was no need to pretend everything was okay with my husband if this was all planned without him. My mother-in-law started this, but I don't care about what happens to the house anymore. I hope they realize what they've ignored for so long. I'm 48, living with my husband and his mother near a train station, which makes it easy to get to the city center. My husband, Sen, who is 6 years older and has been promoted recently, wanted a big apartment despite the high rent. Seeing who I met through a friend and married after 3 years, despite my inability to have children, has always been kind. He has a son, Ryan, from his previous marriage. Sen asked me to live with his family and son, even though it was a big ask for someone who's never been married before. He said he'd make me happy and not let me suffer. My husband thought we should move to a big apartment where I could have my own space. Ryan, who is turning 8, wouldn't need much looking after because my mother-in-law was there to help. After splitting from his first wife, my husband's parents helped him with taking care of Ryan at their place. Sadly, Sen's dad died in an accident a few years later, and his mom started looking after Ryan full-time. Ryan was shy and didn't look at me much at first, but I thought it was just because he was getting older and maybe felt awkward. I was happy as long as they let me be part of their family. My mother-in-law seemed nice and polite when we first met. Right after I got engaged to Sen, she acted so friendly I thought we'd get along well living together. She said she'd keep making meals, and Sen often came home late, so it was fine if we didn't eat together. She told me to handle cleaning and laundry, hoping we'd work well together. After we married, I cut down my hours at the pharmacy so I could share in the household chores. I started work late, not getting home until around 9 p.m., but dinner was always ready. However, I usually ate alone since my mother-in-law and Ryan had their dinner earlier. Even though I was married, I sometimes wondered if that was all there was to it, but I accepted that this was just how our family worked. It became clear my mother-in-law didn't really like me or see me as part of the family. I tried to connect with Ryan, asking about his school events, hoping we could all go together. But when Ryan hesitated, my mother-in-law quickly said it would just be her and Sen, not me. I thought she was trying to be nice at first, but I was wrong. I can take the day off work so we can all go together, I suggested, but she said there was no need because she and Sen had always been the ones to go with Ryan. I was really surprised. When I talked to my husband about it, he said his mom was very attached to Ryan and might think I was trying to take him away. He promised to speak to her about it. I started to go to school events as a stepmom, but Ryan and I didn't spend much time together. Sometimes I felt like Ryan wanted to talk to me, but my mother-in-law always interrupted. I later learned she had been saying bad things about me to Ryan, like I would be happier without him. She made it seem like I was a bad person, which could easily make a young boy distrust me. I was shocked because I never thought she would do something like that. After Ryan finished high school, he moved out to live with his girlfriend and left for college soon after starting his job. He married her quietly and moved away. Once Ryan was gone, my mother-in-law stopped doing any housework and seemed to enjoy making my life difficult. She stopped cooking and would wait for me to make dinner, even though I was not good at it. She would watch me cook and then criticize the food, saying it was terrible. She even said it was good that Ryan never had to eat my cooking. If she didn't like my cooking that much, she could cook herself, but it seemed like she just wanted to criticize me. It wasn't just the cooking she complained about. Everything I did, from cleaning to laundry, she criticized, asking if my family ever taught me anything. She made me feel bad about myself, even criticizing my family. In my frustration, I tightly clenched my fists. My mother-in-law often said harsh things to me, like questioning how I managed to win Sen's heart when she saw little appeal in me as a woman. She repeatedly blamed me for Ryan's departure, insinuating that if I hadn't entered their lives, they wouldn't be suffering from what she implied was empty nest syndrome, a term used to describe the loneliness parents may feel when their children move out. I tried to convince myself that if venting her frustrations on me made her feel any better, then I could endure it for the sake of family peace. However, her negative attitude towards me intensified with the news of Ryan's wife, Lisa, being pregnant. The joy my mother-in-law showed upon hearing about the pregnancy was beyond anything I had witnessed before. She was ecstatic about the arrival of her first grandchild, saying it was bound to be adorable because it was Ryan's. The excitement she and Ryan shared was understandable, but her behavior seemed excessive. After Ryan asked if Lisa could have the baby at our place, given the distance to Lisa's family home and their lack of nearby support, my mother-in-law's enthusiasm knew no bounds. She immediately started preparations, from cleaning out Ryan's old room to listing all the necessary baby items. It was as if she was hit by a wave of great-grandchild fever. Naturally, these preparations meant more work for me. Coming home from work today, I was greeted with a list of tasks. Vacuuming, wiping floors, cleaning windows, and even waxing them, all in preparation for a department store trip to look at baby cribs. The physical toll of cleaning and waxing late into the night after already long days at work was daunting. Any attempt to cut corners was met with demands to redo the work. To make matters worse, my mother-in-law began requesting money for the baby preparations, leading to our house quickly becoming cluttered with baby items. When I suggested that it might be excessive to prepare so much before Lisa and Ryan's arrival, and that perhaps we should wait to choose items with them, my mother-in-law accused me of being cold and uncaring. She pointed out that I wasn't related to Ryan by blood, as if that explained my supposed lack of interest. I tried to argue that it wasn't about not caring, but rather thinking that Lisa might want to be involved in selecting items for her baby. Yet my words fell on deaf ears. My mother-in-law's harsh judgment stung deeply. The accusation that I didn't care about Sen's grandchild was unfair. My intention was to respect Lisa's role as the mother and include her in the preparations, a sentiment that seemed lost on my mother-in-law. This ongoing conflict, marked by accusations and misunderstandings, only deepened the divide between us, making an already challenging situation even more difficult to navigate. I tried to make a fair point, but my mother-in-law looked at me with a sharp glare. I realized I might have been too blunt, and she left the room upset without saying anything. I thought about what happened, but I was also surprised by the way she spoke about the situation. The next day, she stayed in her room, probably still mad. Sen was leaving for a business trip and just shouted his goodbye through her door, telling me not to dampen her excitement about the grandchild. Since Ryan moved out, she's been different. After Ryan moved out, he reminded me of our financial worries. But when I mentioned we should save money for when Ryan and Lisa arrive, Sen misunderstood, thinking I was criticizing his income. He left upset, and it reminded me how discussions about money always seem to end badly. Managing our finances, I've always planned for our future. Sen has given me a comfortable life, and he said my part-time job was just for my personal spending. I've saved everything extra, considering it shared even though it's in my name. But Sen's salary has decreased over the past 6 years, and with his company struggling, he's not thinking of changing jobs to maintain appearances. Now I pay the rent while he covers our daily expenses, a fact we hide from my mother-in-law to protect Sen's pride. I came home early one day to apologize to my mother-in-law. She was waiting for me and didn't respond to my apology. Instead, she shocked me with news that Ryan and Lisa were coming back for their baby's birth, and I had to leave in 5 days. Confused and stunned, I didn't know what to say. "I must leave?" I asked. She confirmed firmly, "Yes, we no longer require another motherly presence. Your role has been redundant for some time. Ryan and his family will be residing here. Ensure that you have vacated by tomorrow," she said. Her words struck me like a thunderbolt, making it painfully clear that I had never been truly welcomed as a member of the family from the moment I married into it. Always viewed as an outsider, the announcement of Ryan's return for the birth of his child underscored this fact unequivocally. "You barren failure," my mother-in-law persisted. "You were afforded the opportunity to partake in child-rearing. Be appreciative of that. We have no further responsibility towards you. It appears Sen, too, has grown weary of you. Perhaps he's already finding solace with a new companion." Shocked by her insinuations, I swallowed hard. The possibility that my relationship with Sen could be unraveling filled me with dread. Was this a meticulously laid trap I had naively walked into, assuming my husband's fidelity was unshakable? It dawned on me that up until the previous year, Sen had never been away on overnight business engagements. Resolute, I declared, "I'll leave tonight," as I grabbed my bag and exited the house, embarking on an aimless stroll to soothe my tumultuous emotions. Despite the sting of my mother-in-law's words, I yearned to hear Sen's voice to confirm his whereabouts directly from him. Yet my attempts to reach him by phone were fruitless. He did not respond to my calls. In a bid for clarity, I contacted his office only to discover he had requested a few days off. The reality of my mother-in-law's allegations began to weigh heavily on me. Could Sen truly be spending his time away with another woman? As despair enveloped me, tears cascaded down my cheeks. I meandered through the streets, barely aware of my surroundings, until a familiar sight halted my aimless wandering. The tavern located behind the station, a haunt Sen and I frequented in the early days of our life here. "It's still here," I mused, stepping into the familiar warmth of the tavern. The owner's initial surprise at seeing me quickly turned into recognition. "Hey, long time no see." "It's been about 6 years," I remarked, trying to bridge the chasm of time since our last visit. "Yes, it's been quite a while." "I remember you," he responded, his acknowledgement bringing a small smile to my face amid the swirling chaos of my thoughts, seeking a slice of normalcy. I asked, "Could I have a beer?" "And a mixed plate of grilled chicken, please." The tavern owner, a man of few words, nodded in agreement. In that moment, amidst the turmoil of my personal life, the simple act of ordering a meal I once enjoyed with a scene offered a fleeting rest. Despite a brief escape from the harsh reality waiting for me outside the tavern's comforting confines. As I sat in the dimly lit tavern, the cold beer and the aroma of grilled chicken offered a brief respite from the turmoil that had engulfed my life. Glancing at my phone, the screensaver, a photo of us smiling during Ryan's 16th birthday celebration, reminded me of better times. Dressed sharply in the suit we had chosen together, we looked like a close-knit family. I longed for those days, the simplicity of our relationships before the chasms had widened. The beer seemed to carry away the day's tension, prompting contemplation of the immediate future. Should I leave tomorrow as demanded? With a sense of purpose, I began searching for moving companies online, identifying one that could undertake the task the next day. My thoughts drifted to practicality, leading me to also look up companies that bought unwanted items, bookmarking 2 possibilities. A simple action, changing the screensaver on my phone, seemed to momentarily clear the fog in my mind. The food and drink tastes especially good, a comfort in the midst of chaos. I decided to table further decisions until after I'd left the tavern's comforting cocoon. Upon leaving, a surprise awaited me. A young waitress from the tavern, breathless from catching up, called out to me. Recognizing me from the screensaver image on my phone, she hesitated before dropping a revelation that shattered any remnant of denial I harbored. My husband was involved in an affair with 2 of their employees. We exchanged contact details. She promised to keep me informed, offering a cold comfort. The seeds of doubt planted by my mother-in-law's insinuations had sprouted into a stark reality. Rather than succumb to sadness, a fierce determination took root within me. It was time to face this betrayal head-on. Deciding to act swiftly, I arranged for a moving company to facilitate my departure. If this betrayal involved my mother-in-law and Ryan as well, then my ties to my husband were irreparably severed. Returning home, I spent the night packing, a physical manifestation of the emotional distance that had grown between us. The moving company was punctual, a small mercy in the whirlwind of change. As they removed my belongings, every item carried a piece of my presence, now being systematically erased. My mother-in-law's panic at the unfolding scene was palpable, yet my resolve was unshakable. I'm taking everything I've bought. Tomorrow, you can start anew, I declared, my voice steady, a hint of mirth suppressed at her evident dismay. Her protest fell on deaf ears as I directed the movers to continue. The house was stripped bare of my influence, leaving only the baby items and her ancient dresser as silent witnesses to the end of an era. Well then, I bid you farewell, I said, my parting words marking the closure of this chapter of my life. There should be no trace left, so enjoy your life with Sen, Ryan, and his family. Leaving her in stunned silence, I placed the keys on the table and exited, the finality of the gesture not lost on me. The movers stored my belongings temporarily, offering a brief pause in the rush of change. I decided to stay with a colleague, a single beacon of stability. That night, as I lay in a borrowed bed, a sense of completion washed over me. For the first time in a long while, I slept soundly, my dreams free from the shadows that had loomed so large. A week later, the distance from those tumultuous events afforded me a clearer perspective. The steps I had taken, though drastic, were necessary. In that decisive act of leaving, I had reclaimed a part of myself, stepping into an uncertain yet hopeful future. After a while, I finally got a call from my husband. I was already wondering if he was involved with another woman during this time. The young waitress from the tavern reached out to me with a message. She had taken a photo of my husband talking to another woman, not exactly young, at the tavern. It seemed like she wanted to do the right thing by sending me this. After following them when they left the tavern, she also sent a photo of them going into a hotel. Seeing this, any love I still had for my husband disappeared. I got the woman's name from the waitress and found out where she lived. Armed with all this evidence, my husband called me. "Patricia, where are you? Ryan and his family are here. Aren't you coming back soon?" I told him no, I wasn't coming back, because his mom had kicked me out and now Ryan and his family were moving in. It seemed Ryan and his family were struggling financially, bouncing between jobs and now working part-time. My husband tried to convince me to return, saying he missed me, but I told him I was fine and didn't need to worry about me. I mentioned how his mom and Ryan didn't like me and probably preferred having the place to themselves. My comment made my husband silent. He knew his family didn't accept me, but he had ignored it. He said he had something important to say and would come back to talk a few days later. I visited the house for the first time in a while. There were new furniture and appliances. Ryan and Lisa barely acknowledged me, just nodding without getting up from the sofa as I sat down. My mother-in-law stared at me fiercely, making the air heavy with tension. Ryan then accused me of taking everything from the house, asking how I could do such a thing when his dad had been supporting me. I explained calmly that I took everything because I had paid for it. I just did what you wanted by removing all my stuff, I said. You must think it's crazy, believing I couldn't possibly afford all those things with just a part-time job at the pharmacy, my husband remarked, looking a bit puzzled. Then he seemed to accept the situation, saying that we had been managing both our incomes for a while. But then I had to explain further. Sen's job wasn't doing well, and his pay had decreased a lot for the last 6 years. I've been the one filling in the financial gaps, and now I'm even paying our rent. My mother-in-law was surprised to hear this and looked at my husband. I clarified, I'm not just working part-time as a pharmacist. I actually earn quite well now, even more than Sen at this. My husband avoids my gaze, and my mother-in-law didn't know where to look. I then told Ryan that he would need to start paying the rent if he was going to live here. After all the support you've received, it's time you took care of things, I said. Ryan was shocked when I mentioned the rent was $7,500. Good luck, I added, telling him I no longer had any responsibilities here since my role seemed to be over. Ryan couldn't believe it, and Lisa was upset, asking, were we not supposed to live here for free? The thought of them covering rent and other costs seemed to surprise them. I couldn't help but almost laugh, suggesting they could always find a cheaper place since Sen still had a decent income. This seemed to calm Lisa a bit until I hinted about leaving Sen, especially with his new situation involving another woman. That's when Lisa broke down crying, and my husband was confused, asking what she meant. Lisa explained that she had heard about the other woman from his mother. It seemed like it was time for me to end my role as a wife as well. My husband seemed to think there was no proof of his affair, unaware that I knew more than he thought, and it hadn't even been 7 days since the whole situation blew up. I decided to leave the house. Mentioning Sandra's name made my husband realize I knew everything, I said. He looked defeated, understanding this wasn't the right time for a divorce discussion. I'll be leaving now. If you want to talk, use a lawyer, I said. My husband, Sen, and Ryan didn't say anything as I got up to leave. My mother-in-law stood up too, angrily blaming me for everything wrong in the house. I responded frustrated, reminding her that she was the one who told me to leave and mentioned Sen's affair. You had been meddling too much, I said. I wish I had been firmer about my relationship with Ryan, not letting her get in the way. Ryan has nothing to do with this, Sen. You should be there for him, she said confusingly, trying to shift blame. If she hadn't brought Ryan back or hinted at Sen's affair, I would still be supporting Sen in this house. It was always her causing trouble. As I left the room, my mother-in-law was silent and shaking with anger. After that, Sen agreed to the divorce without much resistance. The evidence of his affair was undeniable. They soon started moving out, and Ryan and Lisa returned to their own place, leaving my mother-in-law alone. Sen thought about remarrying, but Sandra, his new partner, was upset about the alimony and didn't want to live with his mother. There were talks of placing my mother-in-law in a care facility, which felt sad considering everything she did for her family. It seemed like everyone was ready to move on without her after everything that happened. Ryan sent me an apology letter acknowledging the situation. In his letter, Ryan shared how he wished he had been pampered more as a kid. He said he couldn't talk to me because his grandma didn't like it, and he was really happy when I came to his school events. It made me think that maybe I should have tried harder to connect with him. Perhaps then our relationship could have been better. Even though we're not close anymore, I still hope Ryan finds happiness. I'm back working as a pharmacist and found a new apartment near my job. I didn't feel right keeping the furniture and stuff I took from the house, so I had a junk removal service called Take It All Away. Life is much nicer without my mother-in-law causing trouble. For now, I just want to focus on being happy for myself. My name's Helen. I'm your run-of-the-mill 30-year-old economist living a life as ordinary as the next person. You wouldn't pick me out of a crowd. Average height, average weight, brown hair, brown eyes. I'm as regular as they come. I've always been a wallflower in the world of romance, never quite stepping into the spotlight. Men never seemed to find me particularly captivating, and to be honest, I didn't mind. I had my job at a big company, my ever-growing collection of books, and my small but tight-knit group of friends to keep me company. One day, my friends who were more outgoing than I could ever hope to be, decided that I needed to get out more. "Helen, you've got to get out of that shell of yours," they'd said. And despite my protests, I found myself agreeing. So I went, fully expecting to spend the evening tucked away in a corner with a glass of wine for company. At the party, amidst the cacophony of loud music and louder conversations, I noticed a tall figure weaving his way through the crowd towards me. It was a man, and not just any man. This guy was the kind of handsome that made you do a double take. His name was Ryan, and he had a certain charisma about him that was hard to ignore. I was surprised when he approached me. Men like him didn't usually notice women like me. "Hey, mind if I crash here?" he asked, pointing to the vacant chair next to me. His voice was deep, and his tone was casual, like we'd been buddies for years. I looked around, thinking he must have mistaken me for someone else. "Me?" I asked, pointing to myself. He let out a hearty laugh that somehow managed to rise above the party's noise. "Yeah, you. You ain't holding this seat for some knight in shining armor, are you?" "No, not at all," I replied, still taken aback by his forwardness. "Please have a seat." And so he did. We started chatting, and I was taken aback by how easily the conversation flowed. He was an engineer, had an odd fondness for 19th century literature, and his sense of humor was as dry as a bone. He was easy to talk to, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like I was being seen. "Helen, can I ask you something?" he asked a couple of hours into our conversation. "Sure, Ryan, what's on your mind?" "Why are you single? I mean, you're intelligent, you've got a wicked sense of humor, and you're not half bad to look at." "Yeah, don't give me that look." "You're a catch," he said as I started to protest. I blushed, not used to such compliments. "I guess I haven't found the right guy yet." I gave him a knowing smile. "Well, maybe your luck's about to turn." We exchanged numbers that night, and he called me the very next day, asking me out. I said yes. Ryan and I were like two peas in a pod. We hit it off right from the get-go and soon found ourselves in a whirlwind romance. He was attentive, remembered the little things that mattered to me, like how I liked my coffee black with 2 sugars, or that I preferred scrambled eggs over fried. He even remembered the names of all the characters from my favorite book series, which was no small feat. I was falling for him, and falling hard. One day, he decided it was time for me to meet his folks. His mom, Martha, was as sweet as pie, and his dad, George, was a quiet man who let his actions do the talking. Their house was a cozy little place filled with pictures of Ryan from his childhood to his graduation. It was clear they were proud of their boy. "Helen, you've snagged yourself a good one," Martha said, patting my hand. "We're glad our boy found you." George, a man of few words, just nodded in agreement. "You look after him, and he'll do the same for you." Their words touched me, and I felt a sense of belonging. It was like I'd been a part of their family all along. A few months into our relationship, Ryan threw me for a loop. We were having dinner at our favorite restaurant when he suddenly got down on one knee. "Helen, will you marry me?" he asked, his eyes filled with hope. I was taken aback. We hadn't been dating for long, but it felt right. I looked into his eyes and saw a future I wanted to be a part of. "Yes, Ryan, I'll marry you." Our wedding was a simple affair, just the way I liked it. We didn't need a big, fancy shindig. We just needed each other. My dad was over the moon. He took to Ryan like a duck to water and was thrilled to see his little girl so happy. "You've done good, Helen," he said, giving Ryan a hearty pat on the back. "Look after my girl." "I will, sir," Ryan replied, a serious look on his face. The wedding was more beautiful than I could have ever imagined. I was never the type to dream about a big white wedding, but I found myself loving every minute of it. The dress, the flowers, the vows. It was all perfect. I felt beautiful, loved, and happier than I'd ever been. I was marrying the man I loved, and I couldn't wait to start our life together. As we were leaving the church hand in hand, Ryan turned to me and said, "Helen, I've been thinking. I want us to move in with my folks. They ain't getting any younger, and they could use our help." I was surprised, but I agreed. I liked Martha and George, and I wanted to do my part. I was ready to start this new chapter of our lives. Little did I know, things were about to take a turn I never saw coming. We packed up our stuff and moved into Ryan's parents' old house. The place was ancient, a relic from another era, and it showed. The paint was peeling off the walls, the floors creaked with every step, and the roof leaked when it rained. But it was home, Ryan's childhood home, and now it was ours. Martha and George were over the moon to have us. They showered us with love and affection, so much so that it sometimes felt like they were laying it on a bit thick. But I shrugged it off, figuring they were just happy to have us around. "Darn good to have you here, Helen," George would say, clapping me on the shoulder with a grin. "The house has been too quiet without you." Martha, always the doting mother, would fuss over us, making sure we were comfortable and had everything we needed. "You two just make yourselves at home," she'd say, bustling around the kitchen. "This is your home now, too." I was touched by their warmth and generosity, even if it did feel a bit over the top at times. I felt like I was part of their family, and I was excited about starting this new chapter of our lives. But then, a few weeks into our stay, Ryan dropped a bombshell. We were sitting at the dinner table, picking at our food, when he cleared his throat and said, "Helen, we need to talk." I looked up, surprised. Ryan was usually so easygoing, so laid back. To see him so serious was unsettling. "What's up?" I asked, my heart pounding in my chest. "The house needs repairs, Helen. Serious repairs. The roof, the plumbing, the wiring, it's all shot. Mom and Dad can't afford to fix it." I was taken aback. I knew the house was old, but I didn't realize it was in such bad shape. "So what do we do?" I asked, my mind racing. Ryan looked at me, his eyes pleading. "I was thinking maybe we could help. Use my salary and part of your savings to pay for the repairs." I was floored. My savings were meant for our future, for a house of our own, for our kids' education. To spend it on fixing up Ryan's parents' house, it was a lot to ask. But then Martha started crying, and George looked at me with such hope in his eyes. I couldn't say no. So I agreed. I agreed to use my savings to fix up the house. It was a tough decision, one that I wasn't entirely comfortable with. But I did it for Ryan, for Martha and George. I did it because it was the right thing to do. The moment the renovations on the old house kicked off, the bills started rolling in like an avalanche. Every damn day, there was a new expense, another problem that needed fixing. The roof was leaking, the plumbing was shot, the wiring was a fire hazard. The costs were piling up faster than a snowdrift in a blizzard. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of dealing with contractors and arguing over bills, Ryan and I sat down at the kitchen table, our heads in our hands. The burden of our financial troubles was bearing down on us like a 2-ton weight, and we were both feeling the strain. "Helen, we're in deep," Ryan said, his voice heavy with worry. "These damn repairs, they're sucking us dry. We can't keep this up." I sighed, rubbing my temples. "I know, Ryan, I know, but what choice do we have? We can't just stop now. The house is a wreck. It's not safe for your folks." Ryan nodded and then dropped another bombshell. "Helen, there's something else," he said, avoiding my gaze. "I've been demoted at work. My pay's been slashed. I can't put in as much for the repairs as we planned." I was floored. "What? When the hell were you going to tell me this, Ryan?" I asked, my voice rising in disbelief. "I didn't want to stress you out more," he said, finally meeting my gaze. "I thought I could handle it." "Well, you thought wrong," I snapped, my anger flaring up. "Now what are we going to do?" We were in a real tight spot. My savings were dwindling, the bills were piling up, and now Ryan was pulling back on his share. I felt like I'd been sucker punched. Martha and George, Ryan's folks, were worried too. They could see the stress etched on our faces, hear the worry in our voices. They felt guilty, I could tell. They didn't want to be a burden, but they didn't know how to help. One evening, after yet another heated discussion about money, George pulled me aside. "Helen," he said, his voice gruff, "I want you to know we appreciate everything you're doing for us. We know it's hard on you." I looked at him, tears welling up in my eyes. "George, it's not your fault. We want to help. We just didn't realize how much it would cost." George nodded, his eyes sad. "I know, Helen. I know, and we're grateful. But we don't want you two to ruin yourselves over this. It's not worth it." I hugged him, tears streaming down my face. "George, you're family. You're worth it." Despite the financial strain, despite the stress and worry, I didn't regret our decision. We were helping Martha and George, and that was what mattered. Money was tight, yes, and times were tough, but we were doing the right thing. We were taking care of our family, and that was priceless. In the end, we managed to scrape by. We tightened our belts, cut back on our expenses, and did everything we could to save money. It was hard, but we made it work. We finished the repairs, and the house was safe and comfortable once more. To celebrate, my in-laws, Martha and George, threw a fancy dinner. The food was great, the wine was flowing, and everyone was in high spirits. But then, out of nowhere, Martha started sobbing, her tears falling onto the white linen tablecloth. "We've done something terrible," she sobbed. Her voice choked with emotion. "We mortgaged the house. 200 grand. We have 2 months to pay it back, or we lose everything." The room plunged into stunned silence. The words hung in the air like a thick fog, obscuring the joy and mirth that had filled the room just moments ago. I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, the magnitude of the situation sinking in. 200 grand, the number seemed astronomical, a figure so large it was hard to comprehend. "Why would you do something like that?" I managed to ask, my voice barely audible over the deafening silence. The question hung in the air unanswered as Martha continued to sob inconsolably. George finally spoke. "We didn't have a choice, dear," he said, his voice somber. "Some years ago, I got into a difficult situation. It was a matter of life or death. We thought we could handle it, but we were wrong." As the reality of the situation began to sink in, I turned to my husband, Ryan, seeking some form of reassurance. But he just sat there, his face as white as the pristine tablecloth, his eyes wide with shock. "We're screwed," he finally muttered, his voice barely a whisper. "We can't pay that back. Not in 2 months." Then, as if a switch had been flipped, Ryan's demeanor changed. His shock gave way to a cunning glint in his eyes. "Your dad could help us out, right, Helen?" he said. "He's got money." I felt a wave of disbelief wash over me. "You want me to ask my dad for money?" I asked incredulously. "That's your solution?" Ryan's face hardened, his eyes cold and calculating. "Why not? He's got more than enough. He wouldn't even miss it." "I can't believe you're suggesting this," I retorted, my temper flaring. "My dad worked hard for his money. It's not our place to ask him for help." Suddenly, Martha and George were on Ryan's side, their faces morphing from loving parents into stern accusers. "Don't you care about us, Helen?" Martha asked, her voice filled with disappointment. "Don't you want to help us?" The pressure was immense. I felt cornered, trapped. "Of course I care, but—" My voice trailed off. "But nothing," Ryan interrupted, his voice devoid of any warmth. "You either help us or you don't. It's as simple as that." Tears welled up in my eyes, blurring my vision. I was being manipulated, coerced into making a decision I didn't want to make. But in the face of their relentless pressure, I saw no other choice. "Fine," I conceded, my voice barely a whisper. "I'll ask my dad." A wave of relief washed over Ryan's face. "Thank you, Helen. You're saving us." But I didn't feel like a savior. I felt like a pawn in a cruel game of chess, maneuvered and manipulated at will. As I looked around the room at the faces of my new family, a pang of regret pierced my heart. What had I gotten myself into? The night that was supposed to be a celebration had turned into a nightmare, and I couldn't help but wonder what the future held for us. I remember the day as if it was yesterday. I was sitting across from my father, asking for a favor. I needed to borrow money to pay off my in-laws' debt. His eyes, usually full of warmth, were serious as he listened to my plea. "I'll lend them the money, Helen," he said after a long silence. "But only if Ryan signs a receipt." I was taken aback. A receipt? It seemed so formal, so cold. But I understood his reasoning. He was a businessman, after all. He believed in doing things the right way, in black and white. Ryan, however, was clearly unhappy with this decision. He grumbled and complained, but eventually agreed. He borrowed $200,000 from my father, against a receipt drawn up according to all the rules. The money was used to pay off his parents' debt for the house. And then, just as we thought things were getting better, tragedy struck. My father passed away suddenly from a heart attack. I was devastated. I had lost my rock, my support system. I had to prepare for his funeral, all while dealing with the shock and grief of his sudden passing. It was a challenging time, to say the least. One day, I returned home earlier than usual. I needed a break from the funeral preparations, from the condolences, from the sea of sorrowful faces. As I walked in, I heard voices coming from the living room. It was Ryan, Martha, and George. They were talking, their voices low and hushed. I quietly walked towards the living room, my heart pounding in my chest. I stood behind the door, listening to their conversation. They were talking about me, about the money, about the receipt. "We've done it, Ryan," I heard George say, his voice filled with glee. "We've fooled her. We've gotten the money to repair the house and pay off the debts." "I'm tired, Dad," Ryan replied, his voice full of disgust. "I'm tired of pretending. I'm tired of living with her. I want a divorce." "But what about the receipt, Ryan?" Martha asked, her voice stern and commanding. "We need to get rid of it first," Ryan assured her confidently. "Only then can you divorce her." "Don't worry, Mom," Ryan said confidently. I'll take care of it. I'll steal the receipt and destroy it. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. They had planned this all along. They had used me, betrayed me, and now they were planning to get rid of me. I slammed the front door, pretending I had just arrived. I put on a brave face, pretending everything was fine. "Helen, dear, how are the funeral preparations going?" Martha asked, her voice dripping with fake concern. "They're going well, Martha," I replied, my voice steady. "Thank you for asking." And with that, I walked away, my mind racing. I needed to figure out my next move. I needed to protect myself, to fight back. Over the next few days, I put on a brave face. I smiled, I laughed, I played the dutiful daughter-in-law. But inside, I was seething. I was hurt, I was angry, and I was determined to make them pay. The day of my father's funeral was a blur of tears and condolences, a whirlwind of sadness that left me drained. But as the last of the mourners left and the sun began to set, the real storm was only beginning. Back at the house, Ryan, his parents, Martha, and George, and I gathered in the living room. The air was thick with unspoken words, the silence only broken by the occasional clink of ice against glass as Ryan swirled his drink. I watched them from the corner of my eye, their faces a mask of sympathy and concern. But I knew better. Suddenly, Ryan broke the silence. "Helen," he said, his voice cold and hard, "you need to leave." I turned to him, feigning surprise. "What?" I asked, my voice shaky. "You heard me," he said, his voice even colder. "You need to leave. This is my parents' house, and you're not welcome here anymore." Martha and George nodded in agreement, their faces hard. "We've put up with you for long enough, Helen," Martha said, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "But we don't need you anymore." "And what about the house?" I asked, pretending to be shocked. "The money I lent you for the house." Martha laughed, a harsh, cruel laugh that echoed around the room. "This house," she scoffed. "This house is ours, Helen, and you have no place here." Ryan joined in her laughter, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "And about that money, Helen," he said, his voice filled with mockery. "I found those receipts at your father's house, and I destroyed them." His words hung in the air, a declaration of his deceit. But instead of breaking down, instead of giving in to despair, I did something unexpected. I laughed. My laughter filled the room, a stark contrast to the heavy silence. Ryan, Martha, and George stared at me, their faces a picture of shock and confusion. You knew." Ryan stammered, his face pale. I nodded, my laughter subsiding. "I knew," I said, my voice steady. "I knew about your plans, about your deceit." But the receipts," George stammered, his face pale. "We destroyed them." I shook my head, a smile playing on my lips. "Those were just copies, George," I said calmly. "The real ones are with my lawyer." Ryan and George exchanged a glance, their faces pale. I could see the fear in their eyes. They knew they were cornered. Do you want the money back?" Ryan asked, his voice shaky. "I want it back, Ryan," I said firmly. "And I want it now. Otherwise, I'm going to the police." Ryan and George paled even more, their eyes wide with fear. "Helen, please," George pleaded. We can work something out." I shook my head, my resolve unwavering. "No, George," I said firmly. "You had your chance. Now it's time to pay." After a long silence, Ryan finally spoke. We give you the house," he said, his voice shaky, "in exchange for the IOUs." I nodded, satisfied. "Good," I said calmly. "I'll have my lawyer draw up the papers." And with that, I stood up and walked out of the room, leaving them in stunned silence. I had done it. I had confronted them. I had exposed their deceit. I had won. A few weeks later, I watched from the window as Ryan and his parents packed their belongings into a moving van. They were leaving their home, their house, my house now. I couldn't help but smile as I watched them drive away, their faces a picture of defeat. I was free from their manipulation, free from their deceit. I had won. I had taken back control of my life. And as I closed the door to my new house, I knew that I was finally ready to move on, to start a new chapter in my life. So as the sun set and the stars began to twinkle in the sky, I sat down in my new living room, a sense of peace washing over me. I had faced my fears. I had stood up for myself. I had won. I was stronger than I had ever been. I was a survivor, a fighter, and I was ready for whatever came next. Lily, $100 a month for groceries should be more than enough if you can't make that happen. We'll just call it quits. Matt's words hung in the air like a bad smell. I stared at him, feeling a cold disbelief wash over me. "You've got to be kidding me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. No joke, he leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, a smug smile playing at his lips. "Prove you're not that useless, Lily, or we're done." I clenched my fists, fighting the urge to scream. This was the man I'd married, my husband of 5 years. I took a deep breath, the anger coursing through me like wildfire. "Fine," I said, finally managing to speak. "I'll do it." Matt shrugged as if it were no big deal. "Good luck with that," he said, already turning his attention back to his laptop. I walked to the kitchen, his words echoing in my head. Useless. The man who used to praise my cooking, who loved every meal I put on our table, now reduced me to this. I grabbed a note and started jotting down meal ideas, my mind racing with determination. That night, as I lay in bed beside Matt, I stared at the ceiling. He was already asleep, completely unbothered by his cruel ultimatum. I replayed our conversation, every word a dagger to my heart, and something inside me shifted. This challenge wasn't just about groceries. It was a test of my worth, a value he'd callously questioned. I wasn't going to let him win. The next morning, I woke up early and headed to the store with my notebook in hand. I had a list carefully planned out to stretch every dollar. As I walked through the aisles, I felt a strange mix of rage and resolve fueling my steps. "I'll show him," I muttered under my breath, reaching for the discounted vegetables. By the time I returned home, I was exhausted but determined. I pulled out my phone and started filming. "Hey everyone, it's Lily. Today, we're tackling an impossible challenge. A month's worth of groceries for $100. As I chopped and cooked, I felt the knot in my chest begin to ease. The camera became my confidant. I shared recipes, tips, and tricks, pouring my heart into every post. The notifications soon started to ping. Comments, likes, new followers, total strangers cheering me on in this absurd quest. When Matt walked into the kitchen that evening, I was plating dinner. "Smells good," he said, eyeing the meal with a rare hint of approval. I didn't answer. I was too fired up, too focused on proving him wrong through every flavorful bite. As days turned into weeks, my online community grew. Each meal I managed under the budget felt like a victory, not just over Matt's challenge, but over his belittling judgment. The more successful I became online, the more I realized how much I had let myself be defined by his cruel standards. And so, with each dish and every supportive comment from my newfound followers, I built my own fortress of resilience, one recipe at a time. It wasn't just about saving money anymore. It was about reclaiming my worth, about showing Matt, and more importantly, myself, that I was far from useless. Sitting at the kitchen table, I flipped through an old photo album. The early days with Matt. Smiles, laughter, shared dreams. My fingers traced our wedding picture, pausing as the memories flooded in. It's hard to believe we were so happy once, I murmured to myself. Our first date had been at a small Italian restaurant. Matt had been charming, attentive, hanging on to my every word. "You have an amazing smile, Lily," he had said, eyes twinkling under the dim lights. "I really like you," I replied, shy but excited about the possibilities. Back then, he appreciated everything I did at home. "This lasagna is incredible, Lily. You spoil me," he'd say, wrapping me in a warm embrace. Those moments felt distant now, like scenes from a movie that had long since ended. I shook off the nostalgia and stared at my camera. My growing hobby on social media has become my refuge. Hey everyone, it's Lily again. Today, I'm sharing my favorite lasagna recipe. Affordable and delicious, I said, starting the recording. Cooking had always been my joy, and sharing it on social media was a way to reclaim a piece of myself. As I cooked, memories of Matt and me laughing in the kitchen played in my mind. He used to help me chop vegetables, sneaking kisses in between. But that laughter had been replaced by his cold eyes and harsh words. Scrolling through old photos, one caught my eye. A candid shot of me giggling as Matt tried to flip a pancake. The warmth of those days, the sincerity in his laughter, where had it gone? My phone buzzed, snapping me back to reality. A notification. More followers, more support. Cooking for strangers who valued my tips more than Matt had in years felt strange yet rewarding. Each comment cheered me on. "You're amazing, Lily. These recipes save me so much." While my social media presence blossomed, Matt became more distant. He spent late hours at work, giving me a generic apology when he'd bothered to offer one. "Sorry, Lily, big project. You understand," he'd say dismissively, planting a kiss on my forehead before retreating to his phone. With cooking videos and the supportive online community, I found myself less concerned about Matt's coldness. I replied to comments like I was catching up with old friends. "Thank you. I'm glad you enjoyed the recipe." One afternoon, I set up my camera for another video when an idea struck me. I opened the fridge and checked its sparse contents. Let's make something amazing with what we've got. Watch how we turn these scraps into a feast, I declared, hitting record. It was both a challenge and a defiance against Matt's cruel test. That night, as I set the table with a humble but delicious dinner, I waited for Matt's reaction. "This looks good," he said grudgingly, eyes not meeting mine. The praise felt hollow, almost mocking. But inside, I knew I was more than his cruel words. With every dish I shared, with every follower gained, I rebuilt my confidence. Matt would come home later and later, and the man in those happy photos felt like a stranger. But I found solace in my own growth and the strength I never knew I had. We used to laugh together, dream together. Now our home was silent except for the click of my camera and the buzz of notifications. The world cheering on a woman determined to rise above betrayal. It started slow at first. Matt's missed dinners, the cold shoulder, the excuses wrapped in important business meetings. I would wait at the table, the meals I worked hard on growing cold. Frustration bubbled under my skin. One night, he walked in well past midnight, the scent of perfume lingering around him. I sat on the couch, the dim light from the TV casting shadows across his face. Late again, I noted aloud, not even trying to mask the bitterness. "Work, Lily, you know how it is." He replied curtly, not even offering an apology this time. I watched him walk to the bedroom, anger twisting in my gut. Resolute, I logged into my social media accounts instead. The numbers had climbed again, more followers, more engagement. People were genuinely interested in my recipes, not because they had to be, but because they wanted to be. Hang in there. You're doing amazing, Lily, one follower commented, lifting my spirits in small yet meaningful ways. As Matt's absences grew more frequent, I threw myself deeper into my content. Each meal, each new recipe shared, became my silent rebellion. It was more than cooking, it was proof of my worth. I filmed everything, from budget-friendly gourmet meals to heartfelt kitchen hacks. The community's love and support started filling the void Matt left. Hey guys, today we're making a $5 feast. I said into the camera, a determined smile on my face. Despite everything, I felt a strange sense of empowerment. Each new like and comment validated my efforts. But the doubts still nagged at me. One afternoon, as I chopped vegetables for a new video, I broached the subject that had been on my mind. As Matt walked in the door, I turned to face him. Matt, have you thought about starting a family? I asked, voice steady though my heart raced. He looked at me like I had just suggested the most ridiculous thing imaginable. A family, Lily? We can barely manage as it is. What makes you think we're ready for that? His words were sharp, cutting deeper than the knife in my hand. Is it really about that, or are you just not interested? I pressed, needing to hear the truth. Don't start with this now. I'm too tired for your nonsense, he snapped, brushing past me. Again, the sting of his rejection settled deep. With Matt coming home less and less, the house felt empty. His coldness was a stark contrast to the warmth and excitement I found online. It became routine, his late nights my growing channel. I knew something wasn't right, but I also knew I needed more than his disdain. I kept filming and posting each video, a small victory. As my success started to translate into brand deals, I felt the tide turning. The nights Matt spent away fueled my drive. Despite the pain and isolation, I found comfort in the screen glow, a beacon of hope and validation. Little did Matt know, his neglect and cruelty were pushing me towards something stronger. His distance gave me room to grow, to prepare for what was coming next. With every new follower and every night spent alone, I found resilience I never knew I had. I was on the brink of uncovering Matt's true nature, and when I did, he'd see just how strong I had become. Another day, another challenge. This would be the third week since Matt dropped the bomb with his ultimatum. My spirits were oddly high. The $100 grocery budget had become my battlefield, and I was winning. I prowled the aisles, looking for deals, comparing prices. People might say it's impossible, but I've managed to stretch every dollar. I picked up a pack of chicken thighs, discounted and perfect for multiple meals. When I returned home, I set up my camera. Hey everyone, today we're making 3 meals out of this pack of chicken. Can we do it? Of course we can. I began filming with a confidence that felt almost strange, yet very real. As my audience cheered in the comments, Matt's absence became a dull ache. His late nights continued, his presence minimal. I moved around the kitchen like an artist in her studio. Every chop of the knife was a brushstroke against the canvas of betrayal he had painted. Matt stumbled through the door later that night. I was on the couch, answering messages from my followers. He walked into the kitchen, looking around for the meal I'd prepared. "Where's dinner?" he asked, his voice gruff from another night out. "In the fridge. I saved you a plate," I replied without looking up. He grumbled as he heated it up. "You know this budget thing isn't going to work forever," he said between bites, his tone laced with condescension. "Maybe not," I replied calmly, typing another response on my phone, "but I'm making it work now." At the end of the month, I reviewed our expenses. I had done it. I proved him wrong. I filmed a special video to mark the achievement. Hey everyone, guess what? We've completed an entire month on a $100 grocery budget. Thanks to all your support. My followers' encouraging comments poured in. Matt's reaction, however, was as heartless as ever. So you did it. Big deal. Don't expect a medal, he said, tossing the statement carelessly over his shoulder. Frustration bubbled up, but I swallowed it down, determined not to give him the satisfaction of seeing me upset. Instead, I poured all of it into my cooking. Every critique from Matt was met with another video, another shared recipe. The tension in the house was palpable, the air thick with unspoken words. Our conversations were limited to basics, a flimsy facade of normalcy. Meanwhile, my social media presence grew stronger each day. Fans eagerly awaited my posts, and engagement skyrocketed. One evening, while editing a new video, I heard Matt on the phone in the next room. His voice was low and secretive. "Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow night, same place." I paused, the words hanging in the air. A cold realization began to form. It wasn't just work keeping him away. My hands shook as I continued editing, playing the dutiful wife while pieces of a darker puzzle slowly clicked into place. The $100 challenge had come and gone, but something far more challenging was on the horizon. But first, I needed proof. Proof that he was the vile and manipulative man I was beginning to see clearly. From that moment on, every step, every meal, every message to my followers became more than just a hobby. It was preparation for a showdown I knew was inevitable. And I would be ready. Mark my words, I would be ready. I was unloading groceries when I heard Matt's voice from the living room. He was on the phone again, talking in that hushed tone he'd adopted lately. "Yeah, I'll see you tomorrow night. Same place," he said with a disgusting smirk in his voice. "Meeting you is the only thing keeping me sane right now." My heart hammered in my chest. I crept closer, hiding behind the kitchen door. "Don't worry, Taylor. Friday night is ours. She thinks it's another late meeting." I felt the blood drain from my face. Matt was having an affair. My body moved on autopilot, arranging groceries while my mind raced. I needed proof. Later that night, lying next to the man betraying me, I stared at the ceiling, feeling the weight of his deceit. But instead of falling apart, I felt a steely resolve harden within me. I reached out to my growing community online for the strength to follow through. The next day, I called a private investigator. "I need your help," I said, clutching the phone tight. "I think my husband is cheating on me." "Let's meet. I can discuss what we'll need to do," he responded, his voice firm yet kind. After our meeting, the investigator began his work. While he gathered evidence, I threw myself back into my cooking videos on social media. I smiled and shared, all while piecing together the destruction Matt was bringing into our lives. As I documented recipes, the investigator gave me regular updates. He's definitely involved with someone named Taylor. They've been meeting at the same hotel every Friday night, he informed me one evening. It stung, but I kept calm. "Thank you. Keep digging," I replied, determination underscoring every word. The evidence piled up quickly. Photos of Matt with Taylor, incriminating text messages, receipts for lavish dinners and gifts. It was sickening. Each new piece of information was both a dagger to my heart and a nail in his coffin. On the Friday of their next rendezvous, I put on my dinner table smile as Matt prepared to leave. "Big project tonight?" I asked sweetly. "Yeah, don't wait up," he said, not meeting my eyes. "Of course. Good luck," I replied, feigning innocence. Once he was gone, I sat down with the evidence, feeling a strange mix of emotions. There was anger, betrayal, and something else, relief. His demand for the $100 grocery budget, his absence, his coldness, it all made sense now. I stared at the pile of proof before me. The private investigator had even gathered videos of Matt laughing intimately with Taylor, looking at her the way he used to look at me. The anger simmered, but I held it back. The next morning, I confronted Matt, evidence spread out on the table. "Care to explain this?" I asked, my voice steady but cold. His face went pale, eyes widening as he took in the photos and texts. "It's not what it looks like," he started, but I cut him off. "Save it. I know everything about Taylor, about the money you've been wasting on this affair. You thought making me stretch $100 would distract me." He opened his mouth, but no words came. The shock, the guilt, the realization of what he'd done, it was all written on his face. "From now on, you're on your own," I said, packing the evidence into a folder. "I'll be talking to a lawyer. We're done, Matt." As I walked away, I felt lighter, stronger. Out of Matt's betrayal, I had found my own power, and this was just the beginning. The next morning, I woke up before dawn. The weight of what I'd uncovered gave me no rest. But today was different. Today wasn't about waiting. It was about action. As Matt stumbled into the kitchen, barely awake, he didn't even glance at me. "Where's my breakfast?" he growled, his usual demands cutting through the silence. I met his eyes with an icy stare. "You want something to eat." I tossed a crumpled $2 bill on the table. "Here's $2. Get yourself some cheap junk. Figure the rest out yourself." He froze, confusion and anger flashing across his face. "What do you mean?" "This is ridiculous," he protested. "Ridiculous. You think your affair is ridiculous. I know everything, Matt. Taylor, the hotels, the money you've wasted." I threw the folder of evidence onto the table, its contents spilling out. His face turned sickly pale. "Lily, I can explain," he pleaded. "No, you can't." I kept my voice firm, every word a blow to his crumbling facade. "You pushed me to prove my worth, you tested me. Now it's my turn." I watched him scramble to find words, any words. But there was nothing left to say. I reveled in the silence, then turned and walked away, leaving him amidst the evidence of his betrayal. Once I was out of the house, I called my lawyer. "I need to file for divorce, and I want to make sure he pays for what he's done," I told her. My lawyer, Sarah, didn't miss a beat. "Gather all financial records, any proof of infidelity, anything that shows misconduct. We'll make sure he gets what he deserves." Armed with her guidance and my newfound determination, I dove into preparing my case. At the same time, my social media following was buzzing. Subtly, I started sharing snippets of my story without mentioning Matt directly. Sometimes life throws challenges that test our strength. I posted alongside a photo of a simple yet elegant meal. The comments overflowed with support, my online community rallying around me in ways I'd never expected. Each day, I became more focused. Sarah and I met regularly, carefully piecing together the case that would ensure justice. Meanwhile, Matt's attempts at reconciliation became more desperate. "Lily, can we talk?" he pleaded one evening, blocking my path in the hallway. "There's nothing to talk about," I replied, pushing past him with a cold stare. His workplace caught wind of his affair soon after. Whispers and side glances followed him in the office. Taylor, now exposed, tried to keep her distance, leaving him more alone than ever. As my cooking brand continued to rise, I felt the tide shifting. My focus wasn't revenge for its own sake. It was reclaiming my life, my worth. I plunged into new projects, developing recipes, and making plans for a future without Matt. On the day of our court hearing, I walked into the courthouse with Sarah by my side. Matt looked gaunt, defeated. The evidence was overwhelming, and the judgment was swift. He would pay dearly, financially through alimony, and socially as his reputation lay in tatters. As we exited the courtroom, Sarah turned to me, her smile filled with genuine warmth. "You did it," she said. I nodded, a weight lifting off my shoulders. This was just the beginning. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt an unfamiliar lightness. It wasn't just about winning the case. It was the freedom from years of deceit and manipulation. But the journey wasn't over. Matt's world was only beginning to crumble. The first crack appeared when Taylor publicly distanced herself from him. "I can't be associated with this mess," she told him during their last clandestine meeting, which ironically wasn't so clandestine anymore. The private investigator had made sure those images surfaced at just the right time. Matt staggered into the house late that evening, a shadow of his former self. "Lily, please, can we talk?" His voice was strained, desperate. I glanced at him with detached indifference. "We have nothing left to discuss. You made sure of that." He tried to approach, but I stepped back, a barrier he couldn't cross. He was imploding, and for the first time, I felt nothing but a cold, distant satisfaction. That night, I posted a new video, my mind whirling with new ideas. "Hey everyone, today's recipe is all about fresh starts and new beginnings. Let's make something amazing." The community's responses poured in, each comment a brick in the new foundation I was building. Meanwhile, Matt's downfall accelerated. News of his affair leaked to his boss, and the company couldn't risk the scandal. He was summoned to a meeting and returned home with a cardboard box filled with his desk remnants. "I lost my job, Lily," he muttered helplessly, dropping the box by the door. "Not my problem," I said, not even bothering to look up from my laptop. I was deep into planning my next online event, a cooking class live stream that was already attracting sponsors. Days turned into weeks, each one worse for Matt. Without his job, his income plummeted. The judgment from the court added a financial strain he couldn't handle alone. His so-called friends vanished, each slipping away to avoid the mess he had become. One evening, sipping coffee in my new favorite cafe, I received an email. My first cookbook was officially published and ready for pre-order. I could hardly contain my excitement. I shared the news with my followers, the comments overflowing with encouragement and pride. Returning home, I found Matt rummaging through old bills, his despair palpable. "I don't know how to fix this, Lily," he said, tears brimming in his eyes. "That's your mess to clean up," I replied coolly. "You brought this on yourself." Watching him unravel was a stark reminder of the man he truly was. A man who tried to break me but ended up shattering himself. I felt a strange sense of closure. Moving forward, I immersed myself in new projects, cooking segments, sponsorship deals, and community events. Each success was mine alone, a testament to my resilience. Matt moved out a month later, defeated and broken. The house, now silent without his toxicity, became my sanctuary. I redecorated, shifting from old memories to new aspirations. From the ashes of betrayal, a stronger me had emerged. With my growing brand and supportive followers, I was ready to embrace a future untethered from the past. My story wasn't about revenge or loss anymore. It was about rebirth, a new chapter waiting to be written. The first morning in my new apartment was surreal. Sunlight streamed through the windows, casting a warm glow over the minimalist furniture I'd carefully chosen. The space felt fresh, free from the shadows of the past. I brewed a cup of coffee and took a deep breath. The air smelled like potential, like new beginnings. With my recipe book published and my social media thriving, Today marked the start of something beautiful. I sat down at my kitchen counter, scrolling through messages from followers. Congratulations on the new book, Lily. Can't wait to try the recipes. Each comment felt like a step farther from my old life. As the day progressed, I finalized details for a cooking event, a live class that had drawn considerable interest. My phone buzzed incessantly with notifications, each one a reminder that I was building something all on my own. A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. It was a delivery. A bouquet of vibrant sunflowers with a note. To new beginnings, with love, your fans. I smiled, placing the flowers on the table. Their brightness mirrored my newfound optimism. Later, preparing for the live stream, I couldn't help but think of how far I'd come. The screen blinked to life, and hundreds of faces filled the grid, each one eager to learn from me. Welcome, everyone. Today we're making a special recipe from my new book. It's all about transformation, taking simple ingredients and turning them into something extraordinary. I began, the excitement in my voice matched by the enthusiasm in the comments. The interaction was electric, each step met with applause, each tip eagerly absorbed. I felt a deep connection, a shared journey of resilience and growth. By the end, the chat was filled with praise and gratitude. Thank you, Lily. You've inspired us so much, one comment said. No, thank you, I replied, feeling a lump in my throat. You've all been my strength. After the class, I settled into the quiet of my apartment, reflecting on the path that led me here. The old life with Matt felt like a distant memory, a heavy coat I had finally shrugged off. A few days later, I heard through mutual friends that Matt was struggling. His new job was low-paying, and Taylor had left him after realizing he couldn't provide the lifestyle she wanted. There was no satisfaction in his misery, only a reminder of what I'd escaped. I poured my energy into new projects, expanding my cooking brand, planning future books, and engaging more deeply with my online community. Each venture was a brick in the sturdy foundation of my new life. One evening, as I signed copies of my book at a local bookstore, a woman approached me. Lily, your journey has been so inspiring. You gave me the courage to leave my own toxic relationship. Her words touched me deeply. Thank you. It means the world to hear that we all have the strength to rebuild, even when it feels impossible. As I returned to my apartment that night, the city lights twinkling outside, I felt a profound sense of peace. The woman's words lingered in my mind, solidifying my purpose. Revenge had given way to something much more fulfilling: empowerment, growth, and the unwavering belief that I could forge my own path. My past with Matt was a chapter closed, and I was ready to write the rest of my story, one filled with hope, resilience, and endless possibilities.